What's going on, guys? I'm Tyler, and in continuing my series of Disney movie reviews, I'm here to let you know that Mary Poppins Returns is no perfect movie. It takes place 25 years after the original film. Michael and Jane are now played by Ben Whishaw and Emily Mortimer. Michael has 3 kids of his own, but he's recently lost his wife and is at huge risk of losing 17 Cherry Tree Lane to the fiduciary bank that he now works at. And that's the reason that Mary Poppins Returns, this time played by Emily Blunt, along with her old friend Jack, played by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who was actually Bert's chimney sweep apprentice as a kid. And the two of them take the 3 kids, John, Annabelle, and Georgie, on a series of adventures that will hopefully help them come to terms with the grief they've been dealing with and reconcile the relationship that they have with their father. And I actually remember seeing the trailer in theaters as much as I remember seeing the movie in theaters. I was already going to see it because Emily Blunt as Mary Poppins, Lin-Manuel Miranda being the sidekick, Rob Marshall, who directed musicals like Chicago and Nine, really good musicals. I thought, you know what? Yeah, this sounds about right. But then when I saw the trailer, when I saw how old fashioned everything looked in regards to the setting, the set designs, the costumes, the fact that there was going to be a 2D animated bit, something which Disney had not done since the last Winnie the Pooh movie back in 2011, with original songs that you could be surprised by that felt fresh. I thought, this is absolutely great. It made me feel nostalgic about an original movie that I had never seen before, because I only remember little bits of the first Mary Poppins through like trailers at my grandma's house, but I never really saw it. All I knew was that it looked decent. But having gone to the theater to see Mary Poppins Returns in theaters afterwards, I was absolutely amazed. I fell in love with the second one. And people who have already seen my review of the first one and are probably wondering which one I think is better. Here's the thing. The first one is technically, in terms of the style and the story itself, it is technically better. But you know what? I am much more entertained by the sequel, not because I think it's more groundbreaking, but because the original film was an achievement back in that era, but they had already been doing live action musicals mixed in with animation, mixed in with practical stunt work and dance choreography. They just knew how to do it right. In an era where Disney is remaking absolutely everything and just relying on CGI backgrounds and actors who are good, but for whatever reason aren't giving good performances in those movies. Here you have like actual sets. You have actual practical choreography, actors and stuntmen doing their own physical work, actors who are taking original characters from the past but giving it their own spin, putting 110% effort into what they're doing. Having a 2D animated bit that looks absolutely bright, vibrant, colorful, fast paced on a large scale, fit with actors who are interacting with this artificial background completely seamlessly. The entire Royal Dalton Bowl sequence, I smiled for like 10 to 15 minutes straight during the theater, and still now. It's absolutely amazing how you could accomplish a feature like that. Emily Blunt is the closest actress I can think of nowadays who could even come close to filling the shoes of Julie Andrews, and that is exactly what she does here. I love that she doesn't follow the exact same personality that Julie Andrews portrayed, that was mostly loving but had a secretive attitude about herself. In this movie, because she's revisiting Jane and Michael, and because they kind of vaguely remember the adventures they went on, they just don't remember them being real, she has to hide much more of her actual self, and that's where her stern attitude plays a bigger role in this movie, and it leads to her having this very snarky and sarcastic sense of humor that made her absolutely hilarious. The first 10 minutes that she's in this, where she's like barging into the Banks' life, taking charge of everybody, I once again had a permanent smile on my face. But what's great is that she still has this happy and cheerful side to her when she's on these adventures. You can tell that she's having just as much fun as these kids who she's trying to bring back their sense of imagination to. Which reminds me, the kids in this movie were a huge surprise. I gotta remember their names right off the bat. I think it's Pixie Davies, Nathaniel Sala, and Joel Dawson in a great debut performance. These 3 kids did not feel like typical Disney kids who act really corny and look amazed by absolutely everything and optimistic about everything when it wouldn't make sense. That is the complete opposite in this movie. And these three actors have to add a lot to their characters because three children taken on an adventure by a magical being and their sidekick, it's absolutely nothing new by Disney standards, but these kids have to act so mature beyond their years because they feel as if, with their mom gone and with all the stress that's piling on in their lives, they feel as if they really have no choice but to grow up too quickly and to almost instantly accept doing responsibilities that any other kid would complain over and over again about doing, like going out to get groceries, like looking after, like babysitting your brother or calling for a plumber. These kids are so quick to take care of their own father, and it makes so much more sense when Mary Poppins and Jack come in to teach these kids, you're too young to be able to accept these responsibilities already. Do not forget what it's like to be a kid, to have a sense of imagination, because once you do grow up, you will have less time to be able to remember what it's like. And when you're on these adventures with these kids, you feel the sense of magic and awe and wonder that these kids are going through, because as opposed to the original film where the kids kind of got used to all the random stuff that was happening, these kids get blown away by everything that happens to them because everything is absolutely brand new. Being sucked into a bathtub that takes you on an undersea adventure, this Royal Dalton bowl sequence that I could go on and on about how much I love. They look absolutely amazed. They look enthralled. And that is exactly what Disney kids should do in a Disney movie. Make you feel like you're on an adventure with them. Especially Joel Dawson as the youngest one, because he hasn't really grown up too quickly. He's the one who's still hanging on to his imagination. And you feel the most for him because he's having trouble understanding the grieving process, as any kid that age would. Lin-Manuel Miranda as Jack isn't on the same complexity as Bert, or even really on the same physical energy as him, but he still stands out on his own incredibly thanks to Miranda's performance. There's so much about him, just like Bert, that you can kind of leave to interpretation and make your own backstory. When he says that he was Bert's apprentice as a kid, it does kind of imply that Bert was his father figure and that he probably went on the same adventures as these kids did with Mary Poppins, and that's what keeps him with this sense of optimism throughout his daily life, even though he more than likely is dirt poor, more than likely because he does have a really simple and low-paying job of just being a lamplighter. But working as a lamplighter has reunited him with so many good friends, and you can tell by that through his dance number during Triple Little Light Fantastic. That was him at his most energetic, him at his most happy. He nailed the choreography. You would think him being a Broadway actor, he'd be okay with it, but Broadway actors only have like weeks to rehearse their dancing. He had months, and he nailed so many good things. And character-wise, I love the fact that he doesn't just barge in on the adventures. He offers his services to other people to show that he is willing to help them, that he's willing to share the pain that they're going with by offering to take them on trips, to help them fix stuff, help them move. And he's rewarded for his kindness by Mary Poppins by being allowed to go with them on these adventures. And when Mary Poppins does eventually set him up with a woman who she knows for a fact can make him happy and he can make her happy equally. But let's get to my absolute favorite part of this movie, the song and dance numbers, because it doesn't really rely on the original songs from the first film. There are like some references here and there, but it's mostly completely original content. They had the surviving Sherman brother assist Scott Whitman and Mark Shaman in writing their songs. And it turns out they actually said he didn't interfere with them. He was totally pleased with what they had written. And the nicest thing I can say about their songs is that it really does feel, listening to the songs, like they were written by the Sherman brothers, because music and lyric-wise, they all just sound so whimsical. Underneath the Lovely London Sky was a great introduction by setting up London during the Depression era as being dreary but still optimistic for the future. Can you imagine that? Royal Dalton Music Hall, A Cover Is Not the Book. Those songs did everything a Disney song should do. Have a permanent smile on my face. A Cover Is Not the Book, especially. That, I'm not kidding when I say this. That's the song that I listened to the most on Spotify in 2019. I just I just loved the lyrics, the choreography that Emily Blunt and Lin-Manuel Miranda do, because they both sing together so perfectly. I love Miranda's freestyling about the dirty rascal. I love that song. I thought his tempo was pitch perfect on that. And as I keep saying about the animated sequence, it looked absolutely stunning. It looked bright. It looked colorful. It looked large scale. And the message of the entire song about how it's important not to judge things based on their appearance can apply to so many things in this movie, like judging Colin Firth as the villain just because of his charming demeanor, that the adults think that he's on their side and he's not. Like Mary Poppins putting on this facade of being strict and stern when really she's very fun and cheerful. Or the entire situation that the family's in, where they feel as if they're completely hopeless because everything's coming down on them. They feel they're completely alone, but they're not. They have old friends to rely on, and they have new friends to build bonds with. And that message is continued with Triple Little Light Fantastic. I wouldn't compare it to Step in Time, because Step in Time was just so fast and energetic and so swift. You could see everything during nightfall in London. And in this one, it's a little hard to make out the dancers sometimes because of the lighting. But I'll be honest, I love the silhouettes of the lamplighters. I love how they take advantage of the entire setting of underground, doing all these insane backflips and these twirls on their ladders, on their BMX bikes, on the lamps, juggling torches. They do so many creative things in such a little amount of time. It looked absolutely terrific. It was a blast to watch. And I'm not going to give away Nowhere to Go But Up, which is the very finale song, but I'll be honest, I had tears in my eyes last night when I rewatched it. I'm not going to give away why, but the message was just so endearing. The set piece where the entire town of London is taken on a trip, it looked absolutely beautiful, and a good chunk of it looked practical. And that's another thing I want to talk about with this movie. I've seen plenty of reviews that say this is such a CGI fest, unlike the original, and I'm just like, no, it's not. There's a ton of stuff. This is probably the most practical Disney movie they've made in years, if I had to guess. I could count so many things in this movie just without seeing the behind the scenes stuff that I know for a fact is practical. Whenever Mary Poppins has to fly, she's actually in the air. It really is Emily Blunt just standing there being completely still and emotionless, even though in actuality she's 40 feet in the air and she's absolutely terrified. And can you imagine that? There's this whole thing where a bathtub teleports them to this undersea world. There's actually a slide underneath the bathtub where all the kids in one take go down one by one, and then Emily Blunt does. It's so easy to hide that with bubbles, and that's what makes it such an effective effect that you would swear it was CG. Hell, the kids do their stunts at one point. Eventually, the little kid Georgie, who's like 5 or 6, he gets dragged by a kite and caught in the middle of the air by Jack in one shot. There's quite a few one-shot effects, like Jack just throwing his hat onto a lamppost and it's sticking. And I'm just like, that's dedication. That's Jackie Chan dedication just to get a shot like that. And look, are there more practical stunts in the original that are more impressive? Yes. But are there also plenty of times where they used yellow screen or green screen shots when they really didn't need to? Yes. Yes, they did. Now, that's not to say this movie is 100% more entertaining than the original. Having seen the original a couple days ago, I can safely say that there are plenty of bits that are technically better and more entertaining than in this one, like with Meryl Streep in her upside down shop, kind of like with Ed Wynn where he's floating in the air. Yeah, they are kind of beat by beat the same, and I kind of enjoyed Turning Turtle more as a song and Meryl Streep giving an over-the-top performance that actually works for her. It's weird that she sings better in an accent as opposed to her own, but I gotta be completely honest. The Ed Wynn bit, even though I don't really remember the song, the whole idea of someone laughing so hard he floats in the air, that's just more entertaining. That's just something you can't help. And because the characters in Mary Poppins Returns talk faster than they do in the original, it makes the exposition scenes seem a little more choppy and lazy. During the first 20 minutes, almost everything that you need to know is set up just by Michael and Jane talking with each other, and it's not that they're bad actors. Ben Whishaw is really good as a grown-up Michael, and I love that as opposed to being a dad who sucks, doesn't even put any effort, but learns how to be a good one. He's one who was already a good dad, but he's learning how to hold on to what he originally had before his wife passed away. There are plenty of shots that just focus on Ben Wishaw's face. You can tell that he loves his family and that he doesn't want them to suffer along with him, that he wants to fight the battle himself for their sake. But you can tell that it's taking a huge toll on him. But when he has to explain his situation, it really does sound like exposition as opposed to emotions until the last third, where he finally realizes what's most important, that this family fight their battles together, that they ask for help from other people, which is the overall message of the movie. And it's a message that people forget over and over again. It was a new lesson to learn in the 60s, and weird enough, it's a new lesson to learn nowadays. But the biggest problem is Colin Firth is not only a boring villain, but he's a completely pointless one too. I'm fine with the family having to fight to regain the house back, but really, what is he gaining by stealing the house of a former business partner? That's going to have a ton of blowback on you either way. And the only good thing that really comes out of it, there's actually two good things. One, there's a really climactic scene on Tower of London where, without giving anything away, the lamplighters have to climb up it to fix the clock. And the other moment, which is the big Dick Van Dyke cameo, which, that reminds me, a lot of people think they CG'd Dick Van Dyke's head onto another dancer. Dude was 91 when they filmed it, and it was actually him dancing. Dude's as invincible as Betty White. But outside of those two components, Colin Firth was really just a waste of time as a villain, and you could have spent more time on Ben Whishaw as the dad, being less expository and more of a good dad who's learning how to remain a good dad, or Emily Mortimer having a relationship with Jack, because I like the relationship between Jane and Jack. They both work so hard by themselves all the time, and then Mary Poppins sets them up together. They both have similar beliefs, they both have similar situations, and they're willing to help each other out. But you don't really get that many scenes of them together. As you can tell, I can go on and on about Mary Poppins Returns, but that just goes to show you don't even have to have seen the original to fall in love with this one. Maybe it's because I saw this one first before the original that I love it so much, but still, the fact that it makes you nostalgic not because of a previous entry, but based on the era of Disney movies that kids fell in love with, and as adults they've kind of forgotten because Disney has not been putting out movies like that anymore. Live action musicals with terrific original fresh songs, with choreography done by extremely talented dancers, singers, and actors. Performances by really talented kid actors. I really hope these kids have more to do in the future. And the overall old-fashioned look, through the cinematography, through the set design, through Sandy Powell's costume design that makes the Depression look dreary but still colorful in a certain way. As I already said, I can go on and on about it, but I love this movie. It's one of my favorite Disney movies. It's one of the most underrated in my opinion. And for that reason, I'm going to give Mary Poppins Returns a 4.5 out of 5. Guys, thanks as always for watching. If you have seen Mary Poppins Returns, do let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. You're more than likely going to tell me that the original is better and that I'm stupid, which, whatever, I don't care. Be sure to stay tuned for the last couple Disney reviews, and be sure to like and subscribe. Take care.